Hi everyone, it's Nicole here today with a Love You Like Heart Stream card featuring the Simon Says stamp Love You Like stamp set. This is a stamp set by CZ Design for Simon Says stamp, and then the Heart Stream die is die cut from a background panel to create these strips that I have inked in rainbow color for a pretty simple kind of design, but really eye-catching. I'm always a huge fan of rainbows, and this is a really fun way to create them with just one die and one stamp set. I have a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock here that I am figuring out where I want my large Love You greeting from the Love You Like stamp set to go, and then I'm simply going to temporarily adhere my Heart Stream die to this panel over and over to create these strips. And I want to make sure that I keep the Heart Stream kind of in order. I find it's easiest when I go back to inlay everything together, if I kind of hold everything together or keep it in order like I'm doing here. And so I'm just kind of playing with the die, figuring out the best way to position it to get as many of these strips as possible. We're going to end up with 7, I believe, here in the background. And then we're going to keep the Heart Stream white in between each color transition. So I'm kind of just piecing it back together. As I mentioned, this makes it easier for me when I go to ink everything and then put it back together. And I want to make sure that I leave a big enough area in what's going to be kind of the teal color here, or the aqua color in the rainbow, for that large Love You greeting from the Love You Like stamp set. Once I have all of my little borders here, I am going to ink these up with Distress Oxide inks. I did die cut everything from Bristol Smooth cardstock. Distress ink would work just as well here in this situation. I love inking on Bristol Smooth cardstock because I think you get fantastic results. And I'm simply going to start at the top and work my way down. Now I did end up adding one additional little strip here at the top, and I kind of had to play with it. I wanted to leave this in so you could see kind of my process for working on this. They do not have to be equal. In fact, I like them better when they're not. So I would shift that Heart Stream die back and forth, trying to keep the hearts from being cut off in the middle on the sides, but I kind of just positioned them differently throughout. So I would get this really fun kind of organic type of background. Almost like this is a die that has all of these strips, but really it's one single die that you've used to create this amazing background. There is also a Heart Stream star die, which I think would be amazing. I think that would be super fun to create a birthday card. Now I am inking these up with my Distress Oxide inks. I sped up this part of the video because it's simply kind of getting this ink on these strips, and I did kind of try to clean up after I would ink a couple of these pieces or these strips here so that I wouldn't cross-contaminate. But about this time, as I was laying my strips out, I realized I did not like them to be completely one color. So I'm going to gently blend in so that it looks more like a soft transition rather than each strip being its own individual color. I'm using a scrap piece of paper to help keep my fingers out of the ink. You will get a little bit of transfer or finger marks in this because it takes a little bit for the ink to dry into the cardstock. Just clean up that real quick. I've got 2 more strips, the Salty Ocean and Wilted Violet, and I really love Peacock Feathers blended into Twisted Citron, and I love Wilted Violet blended into Salty Ocean. I think those are my 2 favorite transitions in this. I just really like those 2 a lot. Now I want to keep my panels in order because I want to spritz them with water from a distress sprayer once I have everything inked, and I want it to be, again, kind of seamless. I don't have to line them up perfectly, but I do want the splatters to kind of not appear like I just kind of had them randomly thrown out there. I still want it to be kind of in order. One thing to note, if you are blotting dry the water, do not move up to the lighter area after you've done the darker area. I really kind of messed up that yellow strip and ended up having to re-ink it with squeezed lemonade and twisted citron and then spritz it with water to fix it. And that is because some of the darker ink colors from the bottom transferred to the top. So kind of be real conscious of that. Maybe turn your paper towel around to a clean edge as you work on drying that out. Now, I was really generous with my adhesive all over the front of the card, and then I'm going to start at the bottom and start inlaying. This is where it comes in really handy to keep everything laid out in the order it goes in, so you can just simply move at placing everything where it goes. Because the heart stream is white, I really recommend making sure your fingers are clean before you start adhering these. If you've got ink on your fingers, wash your hands, because you don't want the ink from inking up those background panels to transfer to the hearts. You want those to remain nice and bright white. Look at how fun this background is. I think it's so cool to kind of watch it come to life. I love this background. I'm a huge fan of rainbows, and I think this is just a fun one. Once I have all of my panels down, I did notice that the paper I probably trimmed down, the Bristol Smooth Cardstock I trimmed down to ink and die cut here, was probably a little bit bigger than standard A2 size because I've got a little bit hanging off, or my card base is a little bit smaller. So I want to clean up the edges and trim off anything that might be slightly overhanging. And then if there's any little areas, especially here at the top and maybe the bottom, that are not completely secure, I'm just going to put a little dab of Ranger Multi-Matte Medium underneath those and make sure it's secure and it's not going to flip up. Once my background is completely dry, this is really important because we used distress ink, because we added some water, we want to make sure that's completely dry. You can speed that up with a heat tool. I let mine air dry while I went and did some other things. I'm going to come back and stamp the Love You greeting from the Love You Like stamp set in that large area that we purposely left wide enough for this sentiment. I'm going to stamp that with a clear embossing ink and heat emboss with white embossing powder. Because this is a bold sentiment, I want to make sure that my embossing powder completely covers that. So I added embossing powder several times, just making sure that every little area was covered. And then I'm going to heat this with my heat tool, and that bright white greeting is going to perfectly complement the white heart streams in the background. Now, this is beautiful as is. You really could leave it like this and it doesn't need a whole lot. Maybe add a few sequins or gems or something like that. Nouveau crystal drops if you want to. However, I'm going to take two more phrases from the Love You Like stamp set and finish those by stamping them on black cardstock with the clear embossing ink and heat embossing with white embossing powder, and then trimming into thin strips. And that's because I think this stamp set is hilarious. I love that you can add the Love You Like dessert, Love You Like Netflix, Love You Like nachos, Love You Like a great pedicure, Love You Like Bay Loves Jay-Z, Love You Like Crazy. There's tons of them, you guys. So funny. I think it would be really fun to create a whole card set with these greetings. I think they're super duper fun. I decided to use Love You Like a Good Nap, and that's a whole lot. I thought that was really, really fun. I'm going to heat set these and then trim them into a thin strip using my Tonic guillotine trimmer. I like to stamp my phrases when possible, all at once, and then I can simply trim them apart. No extra stamping and stuff needed if you stamp them all at once. That powder residue Once I have trimmed these into a thin strip, once the embossing powder is completely cooled, you want to make sure it's cooled first because it can smear if it's still hot. I like to just take my finger, you could use a dry paper towel or rag, and rub away that excess powder. And then I like to kind of trim up and clean up those ends, and then pop these up with foam adhesive strips. And we're going to pop these up right there underneath the Love You greeting. My favorite foam adhesive strips for thin greetings like this are these fantastic little thin, I think they're like 1/8 of an inch thin strips. They are perfect for this kind of dimensional type of adhering to a card. Love them. So I just kind of trim them down to the size I need and then pop them in place. And I like this little pop of black on the card. I think it gives your eye a great place to land with this rainbow background. Now there's a lot of white on this card, and if you guys know me, you know that I love to add some finishing details or finishing kind of embellishments to anything I create. And I thought it would be really fun to grab some heart dies that are the same style of heart as this heart stream and create a background. So what I did was die cut a bunch of hearts using the Simon Says Stamp Holiday Shapes die, because it's the same style of heart as the heart stream, from Simon Says Stamp glitter cardstocks. And I'm not going to adhere them to all the hearts, but to some of them. And we're going to go tone on tone with pinks, some oranges, some kind of limey yellows in the middle there. I didn't really do yellow and green. I just kind of did that limey color. The aqua, blue, and then purple. And I think the little touch of glitter adds such a fun sparkle to the background of this card. I'm using a jewel picker to pick them up and put them in place. A little Ranger multi-matte medium to glue them down in the center. And I'm using that tool-in-one to position them where I want them to go. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this card featuring the Simon Says Stamp Love You Like stamp set and Heartstream die. The supplies I used to create this card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more cards featuring Simon Says stamps and dies that you might be interested in. Please subscribe for weekly card making and stamping videos. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.